And we're joined now by Donald Trump's former Attorney General, Bill Barr. Sir, thank you for joining us. I heard you right before this indictment was unsealed saying that the case was pathetically weak. Now that you've had a chance to see the actual indictment and the statement of fact that went along with it, do you still think there's no merit to this case?
Yeah, I don't think it has any merit. I think it is transparently an abuse of prosecutorial power to accomplish a political end. And I think it's an unjust case. That's not to say that every legal challenge that the president faces is unjustified, but this one especially is.
I want to get to those other cases in just a moment, but looking at this one for a moment, they did provide significant detailing of what was alleged falsification of business records. So putting aside the decision about whether or not you would choose to prosecute that, isn't that at least problematic? I mean, some of this falsification of business records actually happened while he was president of the United States.
Well, it's a crime. Falsifying a business record is a crime if it is part of a fraudulent scheme. If it was fraud, it was committed in the course of fraud. And I don't see anywhere specified in here exactly what the fraud was. These were his own business records. He was paying himself the hush money, and the business records were his own company. He's the owner of the company. I don't see who was defrauded. But there are a host of other problems having to do with the statute of limitations, his failure to specify exactly what the other crime was that was being committed that makes this into a felony. So I found what's been put out very opaque. And I think if he has a good case, he would specify exactly what his case is. But he's trying to hide the ball.
I mean, he did.
I think it's unfortunate. I think it's. Yeah, I mean, you know, the left is always talking about the ills of politicizing the criminal justice system, and I couldn't agree more that that's a serious risk, and I've spoken out against it for decades. And this is unfortunate. This is a clear example of that kind of abuse. And I think it also may accomplish its purpose, which is to get into the middle of the Republican primary process and turn it into a circus. And I think ultimately the savvy Democratic strategists know this is going to help Trump, and they want him to be the nominee because he is the weakest of the Republican candidates, the most likely to lose again to Biden.
What about the way he's gone after the judge and the judge's wife and the judge's daughter, made those deeply personal attacks on the Manhattan DA? I mean, is this appropriate behavior for any defendant, let alone a former president?
I don't think it's appropriate or wise. I mean, the president is notoriously lacks self-control, and he frequently gets himself into trouble with these midnight tweets and other things. The thing with the baseball bat, for example, was very imprudent of him to do in the middle of the night. And, you know, these are gratuitous comments and aren't particularly helpful.
So you mentioned the other cases. There's at least 3 other criminal cases. You have the 2 brought by the special prosecutor, the case in Georgia, January 6th, classified documents, obstruction of justice. What do you think, if you were advising the former president, which obviously you're not, which would you be most concerned about?
I'd be most concerned about the document case in Mar-a-Lago, because from what I can see, when it first came out, a lot of Republicans manned the ramparts and were dumping all over the FBI and the government. And as the facts have come out, as I suggested when I spoke about it, the FBI was opposed to conducting the search. They weren't involved in launching the search. But also, those steps were taken after a long period, about a year and a half, of trying to get the documents from him, which he had no claim to. He had no claim to those documents, especially the classified documents. They belong to the government. And so I think he was jerking the government around, and they subpoenaed it, and they tried to jawbone him into delivery of the documents. But the government is investigating the extent to which games were played, and there was obstruction in keeping the documents from them. And I think that's a serious potential case. I think they probably have some very good evidence there.
We heard Jim Trusty make the case that our president can just decide whatever he wants to make personal is personal. That seems like an unusual reading of that law. But do you think that this will end up in an indictment from the special counsel? What's your read?
I did think it was. My read was before they found the documents in Biden's house and then the Vice President Pence's house. My read was that they were going to indict him, and I still think there's a very good chance of that. And I think it depends on how sensitive the documents were, but also what evidence they have of obstruction and games playing by the president, and whether he directed people to lie or gave them information that was deceitful to pass on to the government. Now, the president, unfortunately, has a penchant for engaging in reckless and self-destructive behavior that brings these kinds of things on him. In many respects, he's his own worst enemy. I don't think that's the case with Bragg's case, but certainly he's dug himself a hole on the documents and also on the January 6th stuff. That was reckless behavior that was destined to end up being investigated. So it doesn't surprise me that he has all these legal problems. He was warned about this before he left office.
And he's also attacked, not surprisingly, Jack Smith, the special counsel on this. What's your assessment of Jack Smith?
I don't know him well, but by reputation, he's a very dogged, aggressive prosecutor who will get to the bottom of what happened. And this is one of the things that leads me to believe that if there's a case there to be made, it will be brought. Because I think the Attorney General would have selected another kind of special counsel if he wanted more discretion exercise. Like, well, yeah, there's a case, but we don't want to bring the case here because there's a lot of reasons, against the public. It might hurt the public interest to do it or something. But I think here the decision has been made that if there's a case, it will be brought. And I still think that that's the likely posture of the government.
And he's also unlikely to bring a case that he thinks he's going to lose. What do you think the likelihood is at the end of the day that we're actually going to see Donald Trump convicted and sentenced to prison?
Well, I don't think anything's going to happen before a nomination is made, and even perhaps until the election, the 24 election. This stuff is going to drag out through 24, and it's going to stymie and disrupt the whole Republican primary process. And I think part of the reasoning behind it is that they know this is a red flag to a big portion of Trump's base, and that they're going to rally to him because they feel that this is persecution. And that will strengthen Trump's hand throughout the process. I also think, though, as far as the general election is concerned, it will gravely weaken Trump. He's already, I think, a weak candidate that would lose, but I think this sort of assures it.
All right, former Attorney General Bill Barr, thank you very much for joining us, and happy Easter.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.